Welcome, everybody, to Beyond Wrestling. My name is Robb Helt. I want to thank you guys for coming on the show and listening to this today. You know, here at Beyond Wrestling, we get behind the gimmick and we talk more about what the wrestler's like or what the announcer is like or what the podcaster is like behind all the BS. And today, this show, I want you to open your hearts and open your minds because I interview the voice of world-class championship wrestling from 1981 to 1990, none other than Marc Lowrance. And I've got to tell you that as somebody who personally fights every day with spirituality and how do I feel and where do I stand with God? Where do I stand with my Heavenly Father, or is he even my Heavenly Father? Where I stand in those problems that I have with myself. I was able to talk to Marc Lowrance about this. Marc Lowrance has been an ordained pastor for many, many years in the United Methodist Church. And I want you to watch this interview. It's not judgmental. It's not calling anybody out. It's just about who is Marc Lowrance, who is the man. And I think you'll find that he's somebody you kind of want to be like. I'm Robb Helt. This is a good interview for you to watch. Thank you for being at Beyond Wrestling. Give us a like, give us a share, tell people about it. And if you yourself have a story beyond wrestling that you want to talk about, let me know. I'll be glad to have you on. And now, here's Marc Lowrance. All right, Marc, welcome to Beyond Wrestling. I want to spend some time talking with you. You were a voice of a lot of our childhoods that are in our late 40s, 50s, and 60s. We got to hear from you. And, of course, you are looking good and living life and involved in the ministry. And I want to talk a lot about that. Tell me about where you grew up, Marc, and kind of your early days and what you wanted to do versus doing this.
Well, I grew up in West Fort Worth and went to school and went to church and was very blessed to be a part of a great small family, me and my sister and my parents. And I had broadcasting as a real possibility. I thought I could do it. I had a rather good voice, but also had leanings toward the church. I was fascinated with how the church operated. And in high school, I got nicknamed Reverend in the band because I always did a prayer before we had competition or marched in halftime shows. And in those days, they still read the Bible and had a prayer in homeroom over the intercom through the whole school. And I did that regularly. And so I had leanings that way, and the church was encouraging me to pursue it. But I was kind of an unmotivated student, and I was making B's and C pluses, and occasionally a little worse than that, and then an occasional A. And everybody said, well, Marc has the talent. He doesn't apply himself. Well, I know now that I have attention deficit disorder, and nobody knew what that was then. So I got my undergraduate degree in radio, TV, film, and was doing a lot of broadcasting. The wrestling was most visible, but there were a lot of other things as well. And did not surrender to the call to ministry until I was in my late 20s.
When you started in the broadcast area, what did your friends think about the fact that you were going to be doing something that was highly publicized in Dallas, being the wrestling stuff? What were your friends thinking about that? What was your personal life like when you weren't at the Sportatorium on Friday nights or at Will Rogers on Monday? What are your friends thinking about? Are they saying to you, why do you do this stuff? Why do you do that?
Well, my early gigs were with the TCU radio station. And then I landed the weekend sports position with the then Texas State Radio Network, which was a network of radio production, news and sports and weather that could feed small radio stations all across Texas that could not afford their own staff. So TSN was a big radio network, and I did weekend sports for them. And then I went to work for UPI and AP, Associated Press, and was a stringer meaning I would get a press pass and go into locker rooms and get post-game interviews with the Texas Rangers and other sporting endeavors, and then landed the job as the public address announcer for the local Fort Worth hockey team, which then was the Texans years before it had been the Fort Worth Wings. And it's that job that landed the wrestling deal for me, because there was a guy from NBC Channel 5 in Fort Worth who was a hockey fan from Michigan. And he's the one that had somehow met Fritz, or they had connected, and Fritz was looking for somebody in that spring of 1981. And it was Steve Harms, the guy's name, that called me and asked if I was interested in a PA job in the area. And I thought, Rangers, Mavericks, Cowboys, sure. And he said, well, Fritz Von Erich's going to call you. And I thought, Fritz Von Erich, that's wrestling. I knew Bill Mercer was there, but I never watched it. I knew nothing about it. And I thanked him. And I said, I'm not interested in that. I'll just turn it down. Well, 30 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was Fritz Von Erich. And even over the phone, he had a very imposing and persuasive presence, was very complimentary of me. And he only wanted me for 3 weeks. I was going to fill in for some guy that was going to be out. And in those days, they ran Dallas on Sunday night and taped TV in Fort Worth on Monday. And my deal was to start on Monday. So I did Monday, Sunday for 3 weeks. And when that third Sunday was over, I had really enjoyed it. They'd been great to work for. They paid well. They paid in cash. They were complimentary of my work. They were honest. And I thought, gee. And I thanked them. And I said, if you ever need anybody again, please give me a call. And they said they would. Well, that was Sunday night. And the next night on Monday, I was out at my mother and dad's house with my sister. My mom was fixing dinner. We were all living, in our own places by then. And evidently, Kathleen D. White, Fritz's secretary and administrator, had gone through a phone book and found a phone number for Marc Lowrance. And there were 3 of us then, because my grandfather was senior, my dad was junior, and I'm the third. And my parents' landline phone rings as we're sitting down to eat. And the woman identifies herself to my mother as who she was, says, there's been a mistake. We need Marc at Will Rogers Coliseum tonight. This was at 6:15, and the show started at 8 o'clock. So I ate quickly and put on a coat and tie and got down there, and that proved to be the 9 or 10 year run. But when I got the wrestling deal, there was a lot of patronizing, condescending skepticism from people who felt like that was working for the circus. But as the thing got big and it was so well presented, and we had such crowds, and the athleticism with that great talent like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and Garvin and Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams, those guys made it look first rate. And that's when our stock went up, our credibility went up, and I start getting heat from news media people who resented our success. So it was a fascinating experience.
Were you a sports fan growing up, and are you a sports fan to this day? And if so, what's your favorite?
Yes and no. Yes, I was a sports fan in the day. We had season tickets to football and basketball at TCU. We were regular attenders of the Dallas-Fort Worth Spurs minor league. And when the Rangers came here, my dad had season tickets on the front row of the mezzanine.
The old Arlington Stadium, right?
Old Arlington Stadium. And we were diehard fans. I began to lose interest in professional sports as the salaries and the egos began to skyrocket, as the feel of it began to change, and then, just pursued my own endeavors in life. And that was dealing with and loving people and trying to help make life better.
What do you think of, or what comes to your mind when I say the following? Riff ram bazoo, lickety lickety zoo zoo.
Yeah, I think of that old press box at top of the old Amon Carter Stadium. My booth was 17 stories above the playing field. It's like we were set apart in a blimp or something watching the game. And the visiting coaches were in the booth next to us, screaming, cussing, sexual explicitives, profanity, which is, just the nature of it on those headphones. And we were carefully making sure that our mics didn't pick up any of that in the old sound system. But that's what I remember. Of course, Daniel Meyer Coliseum for basketball was great. And I was right there on the floor, and the cheerleaders were behind me, and the band was behind me. So that's what I remember with Riff Ram Bazoo.
So those that don't know, what I just did is Marc is a graduate of Texas Christian University, a very difficult place to get into. And with a 17-year-old daughter, I'm realizing also how much money it is going to cost me to attend there for her. But the chant that they do is Riff Ram Bazoo, lickety lickety zoo, hoo-wah, wahoo, give 'em hell, TCU. And I'm, of course, a Fort Worth guy. I live south of Fort Worth, and I love going to TCU games, and I know you did too. Do you still go to TCU stuff? Were you going during the run where we made the run for the national championship? We were the little engine that could, man.
Yeah, I did their public address for football and basketball until the end of the 95, I think that's the year, football season. And I had to quit because my churches on Sunday had multiple service then. And after football and basketball games on Saturday, I didn't have any voice. So it was time to step down, and the environment had changed. There was a lot of pressure. I had way too many bosses. Do this, say this, promote this. I just did it, do it again. And so I just stepped down and went on my way. And I go to an occasional event here and there, but I really just don't do pro sports anymore.
What about collegiate?
No.
Nope. And now they're paying the collegiate players, Marc. What do you think about that?
Well, you don't want to get me started preaching, but I think our nation is struggling with greed, selfishness, materialism, idolatry. And one of the greatest idols out there that no one seems to recognize, we know money, sex, success, those are common idols, but there's an idol out there called certainty. And the idol of certainty is such that I'm so certain that I'm right and you're wrong that I can devalue you because you're just in the way of everything right that needs to happen. And so, I'm very perplexed by the state of our culture, the state of our current political climate. And I have to be careful not to say too much, because I hold down churches and still do a lot of fill-in preaching and stuff. And I have to have a little talk to with Marc to remember to be a man of grace in the big picture.
Do you feel like, though, that God put you in the position? Well, I need to ask a question before. My follow-up to this question is, do you think that that's why God put you there? Were you ever able to help a wrestler, a fan, a homeless person on the street next to the Sportatorium? Were you ever able to lead anybody to the Lord?
Well, I had some conversations with wrestlers about life issues, and they were always very gracious and grateful. I was never close enough to really know the rest of the story, so to speak. Connected and helped with fans. And, you know, you plant seeds. And that's the main thing that a pastor does, is you scatter seeds. Sometimes you're with somebody and you're with them through it all. And the stories of recovery, overcoming mistakes, the marriage strife and what have you. I had a guy embezzle money from a church. He's one of my best friends. He was on our staff. And it was rooted in alcohol addiction. And it got so bad and so ugly, as we caught on about it, he even considered taking his own life. And he came into my office one day, and I had his parents in the church. And that was a great challenge. And I had people in the church that wanted to just throw the book at him, lock him up, and throw away the key. And some others that didn't want to do anything, kind of blame the church. Well, it's our own fault for lack of oversight. And I didn't ascribe to either one of those theories. And after prayer and dialogue, I encouraged the church not to prosecute, but develop what we call a recovery agreement. And the recovery agreement first meant me securing his well-being in life by instilling value in him again, and then getting him in the proper facility that could help him understand himself and deal with the alcohol addiction, as well as love and pastor his parents and reassure him that there is a sunny horizon on the other side of this storm, and then stave the church off. And in that process, in the recovery agreement, we also gave him the chance over a 10-year period to pay back everything he'd taken. And that all went great, and we sold it through the administrative. We didn't talk about it on Sunday mornings, but we talked about it in the administrative meetings, and it all worked great. And 5 years later, just a few months after I'd retired, I got a phone call saying he'd paid the church back every penny. And I said, well, what's the church doing to celebrate? And they had a different pastor now. And he said, well, not anything. And I said, that is BS. And I didn't abbreviate it. Said, we're going to have a celebration because that is an example of the redemptive love of the Lord Jesus. And so I rented a venue, and we had everybody who'd been in leadership that year, as well as any personal people he wanted. And we had a great celebration. He's gone on and gotten married, great career. He's a leader in AA. And those are the things you just sit back and say, wow, thank you, God, for your love and presence. Because when people are willing to partner with the Lord, lives do change.
That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story, an amazing witness account. Your personal life is pretty guarded, and it was pretty guarded during your time on TV. I know that you were married, and did you have children?
Yes, I married a woman, and we were great friends. We'd been introduced by her grandmother, who had been in the church I grew up in. And we were married for quite a while, 11, 12 years or so, and were blessed with one son. And protecting privacy of all concerned, her life went a different direction. And we divorced, and I got our son. Now, she still had rights, and after a while really dug in and was a great mom. And I remarried, and after a couple of years, and we were blessed then with my youngest son. She passed away from cancer. And my first wife and I have rekindled a great partnership. We don't co-inhabit, but we are very close, and it's a good season of life for her. It's a good season of life for me. And so here we are. Our oldest son lives.
Oh my gosh. You know what? You and I have just connected to the point that you're in West Fort Worth. I'm in Burleson. We're close to each other. I must buy you lunch because I'm not going to tell the whole story, but let me tell you, I was a senior in high school when my oldest daughter was born, and my wife and I were seniors in high school, and we broke up because I was the kid who wasn't going to make it. I was never going to amount to anything. I was just a little wrestling fan and kind of a jerk. And 20 years later, we ended up back together, and we've been happily married for 11 years, 12, going on 12. And it has been absolutely wonderful. And I feel like that was a higher power presence in my life that led me back to where I needed to be. I wasn't mature enough at that time to appreciate or handle that relationship. And now, my wife is my best friend and all that. So I can appreciate your story. And what do your kids think about what you've done, both pastorally and in the wrestling business? Do they ever go to YouTube and say, hey, that's Dad?
They may. Of course, my oldest son was there for so much of my career, and he especially remembers the last two churches I had because I stayed in those churches 10 years and then 10 and a quarter years. My youngest son got in on my last church and has fond memories there. And he had heard about the wrestling, as had my older son. But I'm currently helping a promoter who has purchased a movie theater here in the area and has launched a new promotion. He's in, I don't know, he's been in it now several months. And my youngest son has been over to see it, and he filled in for me as the ring announcer in about week 7 or 8, when I had to be out of town. And a couple of young girls came up and asked for his autograph, so he's all in now and going with me every Friday night.
Well, did people ever, you mentioned the phone book. They called you to find you in the phone book. Did you ever get fans that would call you? Did you ever get things like that would happen over the course of your career? Whether it was from announcing at TCU, announcing at other things, or even the wrestling, did you ever get fans that would try to reach out and call you?
Occasionally, not too much. It was mainly recognized in public. And if I was trying to have a time of privacy and intimacy, and people come up and act like I'm their best friend and sit down at the table with us, it could be a little bit annoying. But sometimes, that didn't bother you. You weren't doing anything real intimate with who I was with. But I appreciate that more now than I did then.
Do you feel like those could have been opportunities that maybe you missed at that time, though, to be able to witness the people and lead them to the Lord? Because here's the thing, Mark. Here's the thing. And you correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm Lutheran, you're Methodist. I have friends who are Whiskeypalians. You know how it is. The Methodists, the Lutherans, the Episcopalians, we're not holier than thou people. We are all, as the creed says, I am a poor, miserable sinner.
Whenever you have 3 or 4 Episcopalians gathered, you nearly always have a 5th.
Handle, ladies and gentlemen, always have a 5th. Let me ask you, when you were working in the wrestling, that paid you cash on, Saturdays and Mondays or whatever. I'm sure it went to something else when you became an employee, but was that your only job, or were you still in the church from 81 to 90?
Well, I had those other little broadcast gigs for most of my time with wrestling. And as I was sorting out my life's direction, I went to work as a substitute school teacher. And the junior high school that I had attended as a younger man, liked me, and some of the faculty was still there. And I became what they called a permanent sub and was there every day except for TV interview days in Dallas. And so I had a pretty good little living going on. The miscellaneous broadcasting, the wrestling work, the school teaching work. And I was always blessed to be able to pay my bills and start saving for my future.
Speaking of saving for your future, there's an old video that I have somewhere. I don't remember where it is. I saw it a while back, where you and your wife at the time had purchased a Jeep dealership. Now, I am a huge Jeep fan. Always have been. There's a 2021 JL Willis sitting out in my driveway right now. Tell me about purchasing a dealership, and what is that whole gimmick? Tell me that's not a work.
That was in the mid 80s. My dad had a friend from his TCU days who was in the car business and was on the business side of it, F&I and administration. F&I meaning finance and insurance. Never on the sales floor, never in service. And he was at an Oldsmobile dealership out here in West Fort Worth, and he got a promotion to go to Jim Ali Oldsmobile in Dallas. And Jim Ali purchased a Honda dealership. And, in the late 70s and early 80s, Honda just exploded. And after Mr. Ali died, the guy had fallen out of favor with the family member who had taken over and wound up losing his job. And he was 50, early 50s, midlife, and was looking for work. And my dad said, well, let's see if we can put you in your own dealership. And my dad had done well in business, and he got with a very well-to-do business associate. And they got money together to buy a dealership for my dad's friend to be the CEO of and run. And he would also buy in and have a piece of the action. And when all that was happening, I asked my dad if I could get in with them. And he wasn't sure about that, but I was doing well, and my piece of the action was small, but I had the cash to go into it and did. And it was an American Motors, Jeep, and Renault dealership. You remember the Renault line looked like Renault, the way it was spelled? Renaults didn't have much of a market, but the Jeep did, and
It was
American Motors
before
built it then.
it was before it was Jeep Eagle that it was Renault, right?
And it was owned by American Motors.
Right.
And then Chrysler Corporation came in and bought out the Jeep line. Renault disappeared, and it became, for a while, American Motors Jeep Eagle, and then Chrysler Jeep Eagle. And Eagle was a line based in the Renault heritage of some cars that, you know, had a niche following, so to speak. They made an Eagle Premier. I drove some as a demonstrator. But Jeep is where they made the money. And then when Chrysler came in, that's when the thing did well. We relocated from a small building on Spring Valley Road in Richardson to a new facility over on Highway 75 with highway frontage, and had a big new showroom there. And then I sold my interest, and my dad sold his interest, I think, in 95. We took our profit and were very grateful, because the guy that had been my dad's friend had lost his life and was no longer involved.
Wow. Are you still a Jeep guy, or were you even a Jeep guy then?
No, they were fine. I drove a lot of them, but I'm old fashioned. I'd like the big 4-door luxury cars that I remember as a kid. And for years, drove an Oldsmobile or a Mercury Grand Marquis. And as they phased out, I've got a Dodge Charger now and a Ford Explorer.
Well, there you go. So I want to ask, you have a Dodge Charger. Is it the fast one?
No, it's just a nice rear wheel drive sedan that I like. And I'm not a real fast driver, but it's 4 doors and reminds me of the older style cars.
So let me ask you something. Let's move into religion for just a minute, or faith, as we could put it. Your parents tell you, and the church tells you, and they say, Mark, you are the company you keep. Do you believe that?
To a certain extent.
So here's my question. You are hanging around a bunch of scoundrels, people who are doing things that are not something that you do in your lifestyle. You're in the dressing room with these people. You're spending Friday nights with them. You're hearing fans say things. But isn't that the same thing that Jesus did? Didn't Jesus hang out with the prostitutes and the downtrodden, because he was able to witness to those people and bring those people to his Father? Did you feel like, were you offended around these people, or were you like, I'm going to take them for what they are and not judge them? That's one thing about Methodists and Lutherans and everything else. It's a very I'm not knocking Baptists, guys. I'm not knocking Nazarene Church of Christ. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying, I've never been in a Methodist. My wife is Methodist. I'm Lutheran. I've never been in a Methodist or Lutheran church where I felt judged.
Well, we could spend the next couple of weeks talking about this. I was called to serve the Lord as a spiritualist and as an empowerer for reaching potential and growing and becoming the best version of me and us that we can be. I don't like religion. I've never liked religion. I don't like judgmental attitudes. I do not like that idol of certainty when it comes to the Bible and making a God out of the Bible, when the Bible is actually very complex, contrasting from numerous literary and theological sources. It's a book of faith that lives with the spirit of our Creator, that engages us where we are and leads us forward. And I don't do with this beat people over the head with the Bible and judgment and punishment and condemnation. My church is better than your church. My Bible's better than your Bible. I just don't go for that. I believe in loving people, and you start where they are and you go from there. And that is a very liberal and offensive practice to a lot of Bible thumping Christians. But that's too bad. That's who I am.
Were you that way in the wrestling world as well, being in a locker room with people who are doing everything from Diddly Eye Joe to Damned If I Know?
Well, yeah, to a certain extent, I was focused on what I was doing, and I had to be focused because I've had ADD, so I had to pay attention. And I didn't party with the guys. I didn't travel with them. I didn't go out after the matches with them. So a lot of that stuff with whether it was women or a gay life or a drug life or a gambling life, uh, I just never really was exposed to that. I would hear about it, but I was very fortunate. And it's almost like I was providentially protected from it because I might have made some mistakes too. But those were all very formative years for me, and I wouldn't take for it. But it's like Gino Hernandez. I knew Gino was a big name and had done the spread with Farrah Fawcett that had made People magazine or something. Gino had quite the life, but Gino was very lonely, and I could tell that. And so I reached out to Gino as a gesture of friendship for us to get together and do some things, just the two of us, in hopes of maybe shining a light into the darkness of whatever Gino's darkness might have been. Because I like Gino, and Gino liked me. But sadly, before we ever did it, he was dead, and his death hit me hard.
There's always the question that everybody asks on every interview of murder, suicide, accidental overdose. I'm not going to ask that, but do you feel like Gino is now where? Do you feel like he was right with the Lord when he departed?
Well, that's a question that would come from a standard American religious angle. Someone's relationship with God is really not anybody else's business.
I just
We
didn't know if
plant
maybe you
seeds.
knew. I just didn't know if maybe you had conversations with him beforehand. Like you said, you were trying to shine that light. Was he maybe turning a corner, and God knew what was in his heart?
No, I don't think he was turning a corner. I think Gino was badly addicted. I think he had some debts with the wrong people. I think he had been experimental with his physical life. I'm not sure. I think there's a chance that Gino may have had an AIDS diagnosis. Not sure of that. May not be the case. I do know he had debt collectors after him. I think Gino got to the point that he saw no way out and he took his own life.
I'm so sad. Do you think we're ever going to get to a point in the world, Mark, where we can just get along? I mean, that we cannot be so. I mean, everything we needed to learn, we learned in kindergarten, right? I mean, you really did, and you learned those biblical principles that were in the 10 Commandments that are just basically just be a good human being, be a good person. Are we ever going to get to the point where I feel like when you take church or you take any spiritual thing and you take it out of schools and you take it out of homes, families don't eat dinner at the table anymore. There's not the fellowship of Christian athletes anymore. I'm a big disc golfer. I play disc golf constantly. We've got 100 and some courses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we have a fellowship of Christian athletes disc golf group that is out there that we're allowed to have independently. But I feel like when you pulled this stuff out of school, you started tearing away at the fabric of the family. Will that ever come back, Mark? Do you see it?
Well, I don't know. You go back to the idols that we deal with, and money is a big one.
Sure.
And the church often sells out, religion often sells out to the financial base. tell people what they want to hear, what they're used to hearing, and they'll give you money and you can pay your bills and keep your security of your structures and your bureaucracy and your hierarchy and your authority in place. And that's a hard thing to break out of. My mantra on ministry and religion and changing the world is going back to the manger where Jesus was born on Christmas. Because you think about what the Jewish people, the religious people of the day had heard, the king is coming, the Messiah is coming, and it's going to be a day when heaven opens up and white stallions will bring the king on a chariot from heaven to earth and vanquish our enemies and establish the Jewish kingdom as the dominant kingdom on earth, the ones who have it right. God will take our side. And that's what the prophets predicted. That's what the wise men were looking for. And so here you have two impoverished teenage parents with a baby.
That's
And
happening today everywhere, right?
yep,
Happened to me. Happened to me.
they're looking for a place to have it. The town is full because it's the old in-person way of doing the census. The innkeeper, who's regarded by judgmental theology as the heel, is really a hero because he gave them what he had. And when we give the best we have, God does the rest. And that's what he did. He gave them a place out back with the animals. And so instead of this magnificent heaven opening, earth shattering arrival of the king to vanquish everybody we don't like, a tiny, fragile baby is born in impoverished conditions. And what did they do? They loved it. The baby's not even going to survive unless you love it and care for it. And there's the picture of God. They cared for the child and they found the God that religion couldn't deliver. Expanded out, you love and care for the children of the world and you find the holy and the divine. That's where it's all found. All this saving souls for heaven and judging our behavior, that's where we get in trouble. We are saved by saving ourselves from all the stuff that can lead us to an hellacious life of self-indulgence and incompleteness. Being saved is finding God to open us up to the joy of love and care and making the world a better place. So if we can ever get back to that, there's hope. But the religious world we've got now is going down a very different path.
Is there something in your life that has happened that makes you 100% believe? It's like, you know what? There is a God. Have you seen something personally firsthand that says, have you witnessed a miracle or have you witnessed anything that you can talk about here that says, you know what? That I'm living proof there's definitely a God, for people out there who may not know, because I think a lot of people right now are struggling with their religion. They're struggling with their spiritual life. Where are they? They're lost.
John 14 is a great place in the Bible where Jesus talks about what happens to us when we die. He got asked a question by Thomas. And he basically says, if you understand that passage, trust me. You don't have any say coming into this world. You don't have any say going out.
And
I'm
he
not
said
going
this.
to give
He said this to doubting Thomas, right?
to Thomas, yes, who
Yeah,
had to ask the question.
right.
And I always say the kingdom of God is too indescribably magnificent for us to understand in this life. If we did, we'd desire it so strongly and so immediately, we'd lose our will to live life, which is a gift, has meaning and purpose. So heaven is mystery. And when we accept that when our time comes, our Creator will be there to take these souls and resurrect them into that hidden, glorious mystery, we have the gift that Jesus offers when he closes that passage, peace. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. And in the very next chapter, in John 15, he says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servants don't know what the master is doing. I've called you friends, for all that God has made known to me, I've made known to you. Friendship is the honors class of trust. The basic class is learning to trust. The honors class is beginning to recognize God's providential hand in your life, which is your question. And to answer it, yes, my call to ministry, my calling into the world of professional wrestling, unlike anything I ever would have pursued from my background had it not been for God. Seeing God's hand in my work, giving me something to say of meaning week after week, Sunday after Sunday, guiding people through like the guy I told you about and the alcoholism and the embezzlement, all of the stories, doors that open, relationships that build, seeing God in my retirement, broadening my mission field in what I'm doing through North Texas Funeral Homes, back in wrestling again, being a dad. I mean, it is over and over and over again. And it brings you not only that peace, but that gratitude that you can't take credit for the things that this mystery has done to build lives and to use me or you, whomever, in that process, and living a life of gratitude instead of all about me and entitlement and judgment and get ahead of everybody else and everybody else is a threat is a glorious way to live versus the way most people live.
Are you still pastoring a church now, or you've retired at this point and you're doing your volunteer work and your work that you do for the funeral homes and things like that? I know you're doing a funeral coming up right here in my town that I live in Burleson, Texas. What are you doing now, Mark?
Well, when I retired from the Methodist Church, it was time for me to go because I was incongruent with the political climate of the denomination. And I knew it and I had known it. So I had an opportunity to move my ministry to a family owned funeral home group. I had met the owner years ago and had a great relationship with him. So I'm paid, I'm still in ministry. I'm their staff minister and chaplain. And I do a lot of different things, but I do a lot of services for people who need a pastor and all of the reasons. And it's a great way to connect and love people and help them. I
And
do
you,
staff advice and personnel stuff as well. And it's been a real rewarding time.
I think that people, things are so, there's so much white noise out there that you have to cut through. I want to ask you as a pastor, I'm going to ask you a minute for some spiritual guidance right here on this show. People who are searching right now, and they've heard all the religious things. They've heard the Catholics have done this and the Baptists have done this. They hear all this stuff. How does somebody easily find Jesus, and how do they go about having a relationship with him? Because honestly, I think some people just don't know.
Yes, and it's not as difficult as it seems. You just have to seek it and pray for it and not let your skepticism. I mean, Jarrett said in the wrestling world, suspension of disbelief. The natural inclination is this is a show, this is fake, this is choreographed. But once you go and experience it, you know, it's amazing and it lures you in. Spirituality is the same way. People approach it skeptically. They want to turn it into something black and white and legalistic, or it's something that's a fraud and a big lie. If you just seek a presence that is mysterious, that you're never going to be able to measure and calculate, you can't predict it, you can't dispense it, you can't control it, just step back and let those doors open and those smiles from heaven, the winks in your heart. Once you experience that, it'll catch you.
Or you can just give all your money to Kenneth Copeland.
Or if Percy tried to get the Von Erichs to do, Robert Tilton.
Either way, Mark, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you here and to have you on this. I know I'm one that has struggled with spirituality. I've struggled with my relationship with God. I've struggled with, is God even real? And my wife told me one of the best lines I'd ever heard. My wife looked at me, who is a devout Christian. My wife looked at me and she said, Robb, what's the worst thing that can happen? She said, let's say it's all a work. She didn't say work because she doesn't like wrestling. But let's say it's all a work, Mark. That means when we die, we just die. Your light turns out. What'd you lose? What'd you lose? Nothing. But what if it is real? What if this kingdom of heaven is the real deal? And what if you didn't believe? I would rather believe in it not be real than to not believe in it was, because eternal damnation is not something that I would look forward to. You agree with that?
Yes, that's a good approach.
Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and you've given your time graciously and generously today. And I know that fans, they hear all these podcasts that want to talk about the drugs and the rats and the Sportatorium and the what you did and who was doing this and who was sleeping with who. And that's not what this is about. This is about who is Marc Lowrance. And thank you for being that voice. Could be, might be, it is, has stuck with me since I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. Your name, if somebody said, hey, do you know who Marc Lowrance is? That name is, I don't have to think. Yeah, I know who that is. Bill Mercer, same way. And I want to thank you for that. And from all of us fans. And thank you for coming on the show and giving your time to me and talking about things other than wrestling. I wish you the best in your life and the best of success. And I have your number, and someday we're going to go to lunch, because I would love to buy you lunch and say, Mark, thank you. So thank you so much for being on the show.
I will look forward to that, and blessings to everybody. It's been my pleasure.
Hey, everybody. I'm Gene Jackson, and I want to introduce you to the Retro Wrestling Archive Podcast Network and the great pro wrestling nostalgia podcast we bring, including the Retro Wrestling Review Series covering the USWA, Memphis Power Pro Wrestling, Continental Championship Wrestling, and we've just added World Class Championship Wrestling, and now ECW. Plus great interview shows like Beyond Wrestling with Robb Helt, where the stories go beyond the ring. Then there's Dangerous Conversations with the legendary Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich. Plus, don't miss special live streams like Live from the Archive and Arc of an Angle. And the Retro Wrestling Archive Network is growing. We're proud to feature the affiliate shows like STS Pod, The Hang, Classic Pro Wrestling Talk, Get Your Bell Rung, and even more great shows are coming soon. But that's not all. Join the Retro Wrestling Archive Patreon for exclusive bonus content, early podcast releases, special extras, and access to a Google Drive that is absolutely busting at the seams with territory wrestling history, including our legendary Memphis Mega Folder. Podcast, interviews, watch-alongs, live streams, YouTube, Patreon, territory wrestling history. It's all waiting for you at RetroWrestlingArchive.club, where we're preserving pro wrestling history daily. Don't just remember it, relive it.
Coming up on Live from the Archive, Arc of an Angle, we're starting this week, Eric Embry versus Skandar Akbar and his arm in the battle for control of World Class. Look, here's the overview of what's going on and why you need to come watch this thing. When Jerry Jarrett bought a financially gutted WCW from the Von Erichs in October of 1988, he installed Eric Embry as the booker, right in this building that you see behind me. Matter of fact, right in one of these rings. Embry was living in the Sportatorium at the time and booked himself as the babyface and the heart of the territory. And he did that to go against General Skandar Akbar's Devastation Incorporated stable. You're going to see Cactus Jack Manson, Gary Young, Iceman Parsons, Buddy Roberts, the Super Black Ninja, who went on to be the Great Muta, the Samoan SWAT team, P.Y. Chuhai, Taurus Bulba, and others involved in this. There were contract swerves, baseball bat attacks, loser leave town matches all over the place. Percy Pringle does a write-in campaign. You all know Percy is Paul Bearer. And on August 4th, 1989, we have the payoff. This thing started in October and worked its way all the way to August of 1989. October, I believe it was 15th, 1988 to August 4th of 1989. I was lucky enough to be in the crowd for a lot of these Friday nights. We're going to break it down for you on the Arc of an Angle. Come check it out. This is how Eric Embry booked the USWA versus World Class.
Tired of the same boring wrestling podcast? Need something with attitude, chaos, and maybe just a little cussing? That's stspod.club, and we got it all covered. We got wrestling weirdness with WTF News Desk, 5-minute time limit, and the Southern fried brain of me, BT, steering the whole ship. We also have rolling into Memphis every week about the current Memphis wrestling. Interviews, hot takes, and wrestling outrageousness so wild it might get you banned in 12 states. That's right, it's SDSpod.club, or search all podcast catchers for Shooting the Shiznit, where wrestling podcasts grow chest hair. Not sure what that meant. Love my mama.
Got a stack of VHS tapes, dusty old newsletters, testing men in tiny capes, playing old video games. His basement a shrine to the past, the wrestling's glory days forever last. Retro wrestling nerd, he knows every word, every drop kick, every slam. Retro wrestling nerd, yeah, that's his jam. From Memphis to Japan.